President Vladimir Putin's overture to opponents of Russia's bombing campaign in Syria was snubbed on Monday, with Saudi sources saying they had warned the Kremlin leader of dangerous consequences and Europe issuing its strongest criticism yet. Nearly 2 weeks since joining the 4-year-old war in Syria, Putin took his biggest step to win over regional opponents, meeting Saudi Defense Minister Mohammed bin Salman on the sidelines of a Formula One race in a Russian resort on Sunday. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Monday that those talks, along with discussions with the United States, had yielded progress on the conflict, although Moscow, Washington and Riyadh did not agree in full, as yet. But a Saudi source said the defense minister, a son of the Saudi king and one of the chief architects of its regional policy, had told Putin that Russia's intervention would escalate the war and inspire militants from around the world to go there to fight. Riyadh would continue to support President Bashar al-Assad's opponents and demand that the Syrian leader leave power, the source said, speaking on condition of anonymity while describing the talks with the Russians. European foreign ministers, meeting in Luxembourg, issued a statement calling on Moscow to halt its bombing of Assad's moderate enemies immediately. They were unable to agree on whether Assad should have any role in ending the crisis, but they did decide to extend sanctions by essentially freezing the assets of the spouses of senior Syrian figures. The recent Russian military attacks are of deep concern and must cease immediately, ministers said in their most strongly worded statement on Russia's intervention in a war which has claimed the lives of 250,000 people and caused a refugee crisis in neighboring countries in Europe. The military escalation risks prolonging the conflict, undermining a political process, aggravating the humanitarian situation and increasing radicalization, said the ministers. Moscow says it targets only banned terrorist groups in Syria, primarily Islamic State. In its briefings, it describes all of the targets it strikes as belonging to Islamic State. However, most strikes have taken place in areas held by other opposition groups, including many that are supported by Arab states, Turkey and the West, in a war which has also assumed a sectarian dimension with Shiite Iran at odds with Saudi Arabia's Sunni rulers. Related coverage. New Syrian rebel alliance formed, says weapons on the way. Hezbollah mourns senior commander killed in Syria. Airstrikes bring risks. For the first time since World War II, Russian warplanes are flying combat missions in the same airspace as Americans, who are leading a military coalition of Western and regional countries that is also bombing Islamic State, with all the accompanying risks. Those countries say Assad's presence makes the situation worse and he must leave power in any peace settlement. They accuse Moscow of using Islamic State as a pretext to bomb other enemies of Assad, a charge denied by Russia. Syrian forces and their allies from the Lebanese Shiite militia Hezbollah, backed by Iranian military officers, have launched a massive ground offensive in coordination with the Russian air support. They fought their fiercest clashes on Monday since the assault began, advancing in strategically important territory near the north-south highway linking Syria's main cities. Russian warplanes carried out at least 30 airstrikes on the town of Kafr Abuda in Hama province and western Syria, and hundreds of shells hit the area. Russia said it carried out 55 sorties and hit 53 of what it described as Islamic State targets in the last 24 hours. The Syrian army announced the capture of Kafr Abuda and 4 other villages in Hama province. It also said the army had seized Jabal Amar, a highland area in Latakia province, which will put more rebel positions in the nearby Gheb plain within range of the army's artillery. It controls the surrounding region, a Syrian military source told Reuters. Related coverage. UN says pushing Russia and US for urgent agreement on Syria. EU urges Russia to stop bombing in Syria, split on Assad role. Fierce clashes. But the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a British-based group which monitors the war in Syria, said fierce clashes raged in both Kafr Abuda and Jabal Amar. The observatory's director, Rami Abdulrahman, said the army and allied forces had taken part of Kafr Abuda and were fighting insurgents for full control of the town. The Russian intervention in Syria has wrong-footed the U.S. administration of President Barack Obama, which has been trying to defeat Islamic State while still calling for Assad's downfall. Last week, Washington shelved a program to train and equip moderate rebels opposed to Assad who would join the fight against Islamic State. The only group on the ground to have success against Islamic State while cooperating with the U.S.-led coalition is a Kurdish militia, the IP, which has carved out an autonomous zone in northern Syria and advanced deep into Islamic State's stronghold Raqqa province. On Monday, the IP announced a new alliance with small groups of Arab fighters, which could help deflect criticism that it fights only on behalf of Kurds. Washington has indicated that it could direct funding and weapons to Arab commanders on the ground who cooperate with the IP. Syrian Arab rebels said they had been told by Washington that new weapons were on their way to help them launch a joint offensive with their Kurdish allies on the city of Raqqa, the de facto Islamic State capital. The UN diplomat trying to convene talks to end the war said he would hold talks in Russia on Tuesday and then in Washington.